Well, good evening, everyone. Today we had the first ever UK-Swiss virtual book fair brought to you by Pro Helvetia and Literally Swiss. My name is Nikki Mander, and for the last 3 years I've been working with the team on the Literally Swiss project promoting Swiss literature for translation here in the UK. This is sadly the final activity that we'll be running as Literally Swiss before we hand over to our colleagues and friends at Pro Helvetia. We have talked today to writers, translators, festivals, showcases, the works. So, welcome to our final event of the day, a relaxed and celebratory event, I clearly can't talk anymore, to close the day of marvellousness with some closing marvellousness, to celebrate the publication of 12 Nights by Faes, and the first time he has ever been translated into English, to celebrate publisher, translator and translation. So, orders from headquarters, grab a hot chocolate, an amaretto and coffee, a cup of tea, a wine, a glühwein, whatever. Go and grab something. Unfortunately, we don't have time for live questions, but please do post comments in the Facebook comments page. So, last week saw the publication of 12 Nights by Faes. The significant players here are Urs, his translator, Jamie Lee Searle, and the UK publisher, Harville Secker. Hi, Ellie, I know you're watching. In a nutshell, I'm going to tell you about Jamie, I'm going to tell you about Urs. So Jamie has had a recent haircut. She's also done 80% of her Christmas shopping. The point is, this is all irrelevant. She is a literary translator from German and Portuguese and one of the co-founders of the Emerging Translators Network. Urs is a Swiss writer, the author of 14 novels, several poetry collections, and a number of plays. He has twice been nominated for the Swiss Book Prize. I swear, one day he's got to pick it up, I swear. 12 Nights is his first work to be published in English. This is a beauty, I cannot tell you. So we move on to the purpose of this evening. This book, it is wondrous. Before I hand over to the creators themselves, I would just love to present some brilliant comments that have already been coming in. The book published last Friday, so just take that on board. Already getting some brilliant praise. So from Amazon, it's beautifully written, it's dripping with atmosphere, with a sense of melancholy that runs throughout the narrative. Perfect read for this time of year. I agree, Amazon. From Waterstones, discover this beautiful winter gem of a novella that makes the perfect stocking filler this Christmas. I cannot recommend this more, seriously. Go everyone and buy it. And then from A Life in Books, which was written by the former editor of the Waterstones Books Quarterly magazine, she says, this is best read curled up by the fireside. Good reads. It's a hymn to the winter landscape and the power of storytelling. Jamie Lee Searle's translation from the German is poetic and evocative of the natural winter wonderland. Nice. So, how's this evening going to look? Urs is going to introduce and read a short passage from the book. Jamie's going to translate. Jamie and I will chat. We will have stimulating conversation, no pressure. We will. Then there will be another reading by us and a further translation. And then I'm going to tell you all to have a wonderful Christmas. And I just can't wait. The point of the matter being, this is a really special, I'm growing Christmas trees from my shoulders. Jamie's growing a Christmas tree from her right elbow. Seriously, we've pulled out the stops for you. So please enjoy this evening. Enjoy 12 Nights. And we shall now see the first video.
Hello, dear book friends in the UK. I'm happy to be with you today. Welcome to 12 Nights, the time of evil ghosts, of love and snow in the Black Forest. I'll read 2 parts. The very beginning, snow is falling in dense flakes. In the days before Christmas, a man is coming home to his childhood country. Setzte Fuß vor Fuß, als müsste jeder Tritt einen Abdruck hinterlassen im Schnee, der auch an diesem Spätnachmittag fiel, Flockenwirbel im Grau, das herabhing von den Vordächern und Giebeln der Stadt, an denen er seltsam unberührt vorübergegangen war, vom Bahnhof durch die Hauptstraße Richtung Hügel, befremdet darin, dass die Straßen nicht mehr die waren, durch die er einst als Kind gegangen war. Erst am Ortsausgang hielt er an, suchte nach Spuren von etwas, das vertraut wäre nach den langen Jahren, die er fern gewesen war. Sein Blick ging ins Nebelgrau, aus den verhüllten Stämmen ragten die Spitzen dunkler Tannen, als würden sie hängen, baumeln an unsichtbaren Wäscheleinen. Erst in dem Augenblick hörte er das Rieseln, entdeckte das Brückengeländer, dann das Wirtshausschild Schwarzer Adler, den gähnend leeren Platz, von dem der Weg abging, talaufwärts, ein schmaler Steig am Bach entlang, wo die Weiden unter der Schneelast tief hingen. Eine Vertrautheit kam ihm jetzt entgegen wie eine alte Melodie, als sei etwas mit einem Male wieder da, was ihm all die Jahre gefehlt hatte. Den Weg waren sie jede Woche gegangen, der Vater, die Mutter, Sebastian mit den anderen von den Schottenhöfen, der sonntägliche Kirchgang. Er hatte in der Zeller Pfarrkirche kurz verweilt, an die Mutter gedacht, an Minna. Sie hatte das Marienbild geliebt, war oft, wenn der Tag sie gequält hatte, aufgebrochen. Ich gehe zu Maria von der Ketten, ein Spaziergang als kleine Wallfahrt. Sie hatte die Legenden, die um die Kirche sich rankten, nacherzählt, auch die von Magdalene. Nach all den Jahren hörte er Minnas Stimme. Sie war da, seltsam, aber nicht zu leugnen. Die Lichtgirlanden in der Zeller Hauptstraße hatten ihn daran erinnert, dass Weihnachten nahte, Einkäufe zu tätigen waren. Er hatte nichts besorgt. Der Bruder mochte keine Geschenke. Er zuckte kurz zusammen, falls sie sich überhaupt sehen würden. Seine Hände umklammerten die Tragriemen des Rucksacks, der leicht wog, trockene Handschuhe, 2 Brötchen, die Wasserflasche. Bis zum Gasthaus würde das reichen. Dort wäre sein Gepäck, das er vorausgeschickt hatte, um zu Fuß in die Landschaft hineinschreiten zu können. Eine Stunde vielleicht, auch wenn er langsam ginge, öfter stehen bleiben würde, um genau hinzuschauen. Auf das talwärts steigende, hügelige Land mit den dunklen Tannen, die dicht und schweigend standen, den Tag zur Tannennacht machten, das Wipfelrauschen zum Abendlied. Er mochte das Land, auch wenn es nach so vielen Jahren bloß noch Erinnerung war. Die Herbsttage besonders, wenn die Ernte anstand, die Früchte der Apfelbäume glänzten, Boskop, Jonagold, an den Hängen die Reben prall, die Kastanien voller Früchte waren, das Kartoffelkraut gelb über den Furchen wucherte und die Sonne durch die Kronen der schütter werdenden Bäume fiel, sich im Buschwerk verhederte, Staubpartikel tanzen ließ, die dichter werdenden Lärchen und Eichen des Waldes verklärte. Und er mit dem Bruder unterwegs, mit Sebastian, lange vor dem Streit. Damals lauschten sie gemeinsam ins Tobel hinunter, das vom Grafenberg heraufzog, auf das Krächzen der Raben in der Stille. Für einen Augenblick hoffte er, mit der Rückkehr sich in dieses verlorene und doch vertraut gebliebene Land noch einmal hineinzufinden, heimzufinden. Schon die Namen riefen Nähwach, der Kuhhornkopf, der aus dem Dunst stieg, der Hasenberg, die Trampelpfade durchs Hullert bis hinauf zum Vogt auf Mühlstein, dessen Name auch für das Geheimnis alter Zeiten stand. Da hatten Sebastian und er oft mit dem Vater gesessen, breitbeinig auf der Bank, aber in schweigendem Einklang, der nicht mal den Gedanken aufkommen ließ, sie könnten dereinst in Streit geraten, auch nicht Minnas wegen. My British sheep, a Scottish black Faes, was with me in the black forest, looking now with melancholy eyes to you. It too wishes to be back home.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Jamie Lee-Sell. I'm the translator of 12 Nights, and I'm now going to read my translation of the passage that you just heard from Uz. He placed one foot firmly in front of the other, as though each step had to leave an imprint in the snow. It was falling on this late afternoon too, whirling flakes in the grey that shrouded the town's porches and gables. He felt strangely unmoved as he passed them by, making his way along the road from the train station and towards the hill, unsettled that the streets were no longer the ones he had walked as a child. Only on the edge of town did he stop and look around, searching for traces of something familiar after his many years of absence. His gaze was drawn into the grey mist, from which the tips of dark firs soared, their trunks veiled, making it look as though they were hanging, dangling from invisible washing lines. Only then did he hear the sound of trickling water and spot the parapet of the bridge, then the sign for the Schwarze Adler Inn and the yawningly empty space where the path branched off up the valley. A narrow, steep track along the stream, where willow trees sagged low to the ground beneath their burden of snow. Familiarity drifted towards him like an old melody, as though something that had been missing all these years had suddenly returned. They used to walk this path every Sunday. He, his father, his mother and Sebastian, along with the others from the Schortenhofer farms, the weekly church visit. He had paused for a while in the Zell parish church, Maria zu den Ketten, thinking about his mother and Minna, who had loved its painting of the Virgin Mary. Whenever a day had become too much for her, Minna would set off with the words, "I'm just walking to the church. It will be like a little pilgrimage." She would tell him the legends entwined with its history, including the one about Lena and Hans, the tragic lovers of the Black Forest. After all these years, he heard Minna's voice again. She was here. It was strange, yet undeniable. The festive lights strung up in Zell's Main Street had reminded him that Christmas was approaching. There was shopping to be done. He hadn't brought anything. His brother didn't care for presents. He flinched, if they would even see each other at all. His hands clutched the straps of his rucksack. It was light, containing only a spare pair of gloves, 2 bread rolls, and his water bottle. That was all he would need until he reached the inn, where his luggage awaited him. He had sent it ahead so he could make his way through the countryside on foot, an hour's walk perhaps, even if he took his time, and stopped now and again to gaze at the valley's undulating landscape, its green-black pines huddled close and silent, making the day into night, and the murmur of the treetops into an evensong. He wanted to make his way slowly towards the houses, huts, stables and sheds that rose out of the snow grey, to find his footing in this gradual process of familiarization, a feeling of arrival that he hadn't felt in a long time, not since he had left. He loved this land, even though after so many years it had become just a memory, and the autumn days in particular, when the harvest drew near and the orchard fruits, Boskop and Jonagold apples, glistened, the vines on the hillsides full to bursting, and the chestnuts' branches heavy with burrs. When the yellow potato leaves grew rampant across the furrows, and the sun tumbled through the crowns of the ever more sparsely leaved trees, becoming entangled in the foliage, making the dust grains dance, haloing the thinning larches and oaks of the forest. And he, out with his brother, Sebastian, long before their feud. Back then, when the fields were fallow and sallow, the beech leaves deep brown and the weeping willows fused into a sombre copse, they had stood together, listening down into the ravine that yawned out from the Grafenberg, to the ravens cawing into the silence. For a moment, he hoped that by returning, he would be able to reconcile with this at once lost yet intimate landscape, perhaps even find his way home. The names alone evoked closeness. The peak of the Kuhhornkopf jutting out of the walls of grey mist, the Hasenberg, the track through Hullet up to the Vogtaf Moorstein Inn. its name too, containing secrets of times gone by. He and Sebastian had often sat there with their father, wide-legged on the bench, in a silent harmony that had never even given rise to the thought that they might one day argue, much less over Minna.
Beautiful. Seriously beautiful. I could just listen to that all night. Point of the matter being, Jamie, it's almost like a homecoming for you, isn't it? You know this part of the world. Am I right in saying?
Yes, I do. When I first started learning German, so I was about 11 at the time, and I had an incredible German teacher, which is the reason why everything happened with me in terms of the choices I made through university and career-wise. We had a school exchange when I was 11, and it was to the Black Forest. And we were a little further south, but we did day trips throughout a course of about 10-day trip. And we didn't go to the precise villages that are mentioned in the book, but very close. So I was quite familiar with the way the landscape looks and so on. And I found when I started work on the book, I went back through some old books and found this book on the Black Forest, which my exchange family gave to me when I was 11. And there's a map just inside, and the village that is where the book is set is just down here. And I just thought that was lovely. I mean, I've had this book with me for 25 years or something now, and finding that when I was working on it was so lovely.
I love that. That's so special. That it's meant to be. It's absolutely meant to be. And now, this period of time, the 12 nights, extraordinary, really quite extraordinary, and so potent. You know, we just like to think Partridge in a Pear Tree. It is so much more than that. Point of the matter being, did you talk me through you and 12 Nights and this book? Because you, timing wise, things have happened with you and this book in 12 Nights, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. So I first discovered the book, and you've probably seen it on Ursa's reading, but this is the original copy here. I first discovered it when I was at a New Books in German meeting in late 2018, because I've won among with a few other translators, I'm one of their kind of translator consultants. So we look at books that have been submitted and decide which ones will be sent out to readers. And one of the perks of this is you get to be one of the first people to see the books. And I spotted it on the table in the meeting and I thought, right, that looks fascinating. I'm having that. So I decided that I was going to write the report on the book. Well, I obviously asked, but it was fine. I actually read it during the 12 nights of 2018 because the meeting was just before Christmas, and it just so happened that was when I had the time to read it. And then I worked on it through 2019, but the key kind of editing time were the 12 nights of last year, so of 2019 going into 2020. So it just seemed that kind of both those years in a row, it just so happened that I was working on it at that time. And I think that really helps because at that time of year when everything's so cold and quiet, and I was doing research into the myths and legends that are mentioned in the book and really immersing myself in that atmosphere. I think, I don't think it would have quite worked the same if I'd been translating it in 30-degree heat in summer or something.
Exactly. I absolutely agree with you because you convey that all the mystery and maybe there's a spirit, maybe there isn't, and deep cold. You convey that so utterly beautifully. So now, question to you: so Havelsäcker, hurrah Havelsäcker, they took this. Did you as translator say, right, this I love, this is going to happen? Did you sort of go forth and find a publisher, or how did the process work that a publisher said, yeah, let's do this?
So I was definitely planning to do that, and I had a little list in my mind of the publishers that I was thinking of approaching. And before I could even get to that point, because I think this is probably still the first week of January or something, I was speaking on the phone. Well, I was due to speak on the phone with Kate Harvey from Havelsäcker about a New Books in German project separate to this. And she happened to be one of the editors that they sometimes invite different editors to the second editorial meeting. She was in that meeting, so she read the report that I'd written, liked the sound of the book, and so then when I emailed her about something else, she said, can we actually speak also about this book because it sounds wonderful? And we talked on the phone, and she said, would you like to translate it? And of course I said I'd love to. And so I hadn't even got, it was a few days after I'd written the report, I hadn't even got to the point of sitting down and going after people yet, but it just happened like that. It was the kind of easiest commission that has ever happened to me, really, but it was great.
So therein lies the tale. Sort of find the book you're going to champion, write a stonking report that no one can ignore, and also it's a bloody good book, full stop. Let's face it, Ursula's written an absolute beauty.
Yeah,
So
incredible, yeah.
And so the working process between translator and creator, how did you talk with one another? Did you meet one another? How did that work out?
So we conversed by email. I have met some of the authors I've translated in the past, but at this point I was going through a bit of a kind of homecoming of my own because I'd moved back to the UK after being in South America for 5 years. So I was at a point in time where I wasn't really doing as much travel, which I know we're all in now. But so whereas in the past I probably would have suggested some kind of meetup or gone over there to do some more research into the area, at this point I was quite focused on settling things here. So we conversed by email and he was incredibly helpful. It was a really nice exchange actually, because a lot of the specifics I was asking him were about the details of the myths and legends. So for example, there's one in there about the Hollander Michel, and he told me that there was a book of Black Forest myths and legends that appeared in, so I managed to get a secondhand copy of that online, and that was really good. Also, a lot of the time I was sending him pictures of plants and saying, is this the one you're describing? Because sometimes there are lots of different terms for plants and herbs depending on which region of the world you're in, and there's also there'd be the family of a certain, but there'll be different kinds. So the internet sometimes isn't enough in terms of words itself with that kind of thing. So to really be sure, I was saying to him, well, there's 3 different definitions of how I could describe this. I really want to pick the most poetic one possible, because you don't want to have just a dry, academic sounding word. But a lot of the time I was sending him pictures and saying, is this the one? And then he would respond on that. So that was incredibly helpful as well.
That's so helpful, but also I love you for going that extra mile, because man, I cannot rave about this book enough. You absolutely nail it. I mean, I don't know which plants are, but I know that you have got it absolutely right. I know that it just feels as a reader, it's so very transporting. It's utterly gorgeous, quite frankly.
It's really good to hear, thank you.
2 questions for you. The Book of Myths and Legends, has that been translated yet into English? Just saying.
I don't think it has actually.
Okay. Let's just leave that one out there, Jamie.
Yeah, good point.
Has it been translated into English? Point of the matter being, what have you read of late what's your, because this grabbed you. You wrote your reader's report. It absolutely grabbed you. Has there been anything else of late that's really grabbed you that you're like, come on, we need to see this in the UK?
At the moment, there's a couple of things that have grabbed me that I'm still in the process of reading, so I'm not all the way through them yet. So far this year, I've been doing less. I've been reading a little bit less German language than I ordinarily would. I think I've been reading a lot of memoir and nature writing in English, because I found that's helped me this year in particular with the kind of year it's been. Also, I've been reading quite a bit of Brazilian stuff, but German-wise, there's 2 novels that working my way through that I really love. And one of them is called Aleph by Katharina Hoffmann, which is actually being published in spring of next year. But I worked on the sample for it. And it's a really interesting one, because the author actually, I did the sample over a year ago, but she rewrote most of the book. And before the publication, obviously, and so they came back to me to ask me to do the new sample. And because I've gotten into doing my own writing this year, having seen the way the book originally was and now seeing this new version has been really fascinating in terms of the edit, structural edits and how intense edits can be. So yeah, that's one to kind of watch out for.
Okay. Well, I'm going to get some info from you. We're going to put that on the new Swiss Bites, the next Swiss Bites, the final Swiss Bites. We'll put that there. Anything that you recommend, I'm going to follow with a passion. How the hell do you juggle your German, Brazilian, Portuguese, German? No. How do you mix that up? I mean, that's mental.
I mean, they are different languages, obviously. In a way, I feel like that helps because about 7 years ago, I could speak quite good Spanish, and I was planning to make at some point Spanish my second language to translate from. But then once I moved to Brazil, Portuguese completely pushed Spanish out of my head. So I can still understand it, but if I try and speak Spanish, it comes out in Portuguese. So I feel in a way that the fact that German and Portuguese are so different helps them to both stay in my head and coexist.
Like it. Which language do you dream in?
Portuguese, actually.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a few years that I've been back now, but I'm still dreaming in Portuguese. So that is.
It's so satisfying when that happens. So satisfying.
Yeah, it is.
Let us let our audience be satisfied once more. I think it is time to play another reading, another video of us.
Hello again. So I'm just going to read a few more pages from what you've just heard from Øystein. Where did Minna stand? That was the question he asked himself that morning. All his hope was pinned on her. Could he have read the signs, a turning away from him and towards his brother? I'm fond of you both, but you're my great love, she had said. And then she had looked at him with that expression so completely without distrust. All his love belonged to Minna, unconditionally. It had done all these years. To him, she was everything life had to give. Minna had opened up new paths for him. He never forgot that. Paths out into the countryside, from the Frog's house and across to the clearing atop the densely wooded Flacken hills, then down along the banks of the Regelsbach to Schroffen, or along the Rulsbach into the Stollengrund glade. It was she who had taught him to listen, to the susurration of the winter twilight below the Mooskopf, to the cry of a bird at the Haldeneck viewpoint, to the roaring of the fallow deer in the ravine. Minna knew paths through both wood and meadow, and took him along on horseback or simply on foot, up the valley to Heidenkirche, where moss and ferns grew across the sandstone rock formations, speckled with grass, where dark chambers and crevices opened up, beckoning into the underworld. At one time, distant gods were worshipped in these caves. Or she led him to the monastery ruins up on Allerheiligenberg, so isolated they seemed beyond this world. And just the two of them there. They had so often sought out remote places, especially when they were going through a difficult time, struggling with the world and with love, out of harmony with themselves, with the lives they were living. So many plans and so few days lived, their gazes trained on the future, the present still slight. Why could he still not be here without being reminded of her? Why was every step he took into this landscape a step towards her, even now after decades had passed, and one still accompanied by pain? Was this what had brought him back to the valley of his childhood? She had walked beside him quietly and unobtrusively, wearing her sturdy shoes, blue jacket, and the rucksack from which she would occasionally pass him something, an apple, a piece of bread, the water bottle, an intentiveness which was instinctive. Minna was there, always completely herself, the kind of person you want to take in your arms. He wondered about the origins of this strange tenderness he felt towards her, which had never faded, not even long after she became Sebastian's, as though some part of him was still with her. It flickered again and again, even far away in his overseas exile, and had awakened once more as he made his way from the train station into the Hammersbach Valley, to the Vogt auf Moorstein, to the Grafenberg, to Reutergut, and up to the Taschenkopf. These places remained intertwined with Minna, with the sound of her voice recounting Lena and Hans' sad fate. She knew the paths they had taken and the places they had lingered, including right here by this crucifix. Lena had stood on this very spot, pleading, imploring for happiness in love. He listened as Minna spun the threads of her narrative, following the lovers' footsteps, their furtive embraces. He felt her hand in his, and within it, everything he felt for her. Minna's almost reverent pace, which seemed to invite one to pause, was notched with images, colours, with the vibrant olive orange of the pumpkins in the brackish water of the swampy hollows, where the sounds became trapped, the chirr of a robin, the dull whir of the telegraph poles. Minna remained. She was there in her gestures, a passed apple or mug of tea, or one of the biscuits made from flour and sugar, and also in the little gifts she gave from time to time. She would place something down casually, a small package, a flower, a stone with unusual veining. It was always something oddly characteristic of Minna, selected with care, lovingly wrapped or arranged, striking and priceless for that reason alone, and expressing a great deal about the person who had found, crafted, and gifted it. That was Minna.
You are so utterly wonderful. I cannot tell you. Thank you very much indeed. Well, it is time for us to close this evening. It's time for everyone to go and buy a copy of this. Seriously, just go and get one for authors right this minute. Now, it's time for me to say thank yous and good nights. Thank you, Jamie, so much. Absolutely bang on. Thank you, Urs. Thank you to Pro Helvetia, to the Swiss Embassy, to the Swiss. You can find all the films and information about our Swiss UK Publishing Day and our Literally Swiss project on the European Literature Network website. We're now handing over the Literally Swiss baton, or whatever, to the Swiss Arts Council in Zurich. Go forth to Pro Helvetia, specifically to Eva Stenstrud as your main go-to person. All their contacts are now on the new Translate Swiss Books website. Watch what Jamie recommends. I mean, seriously, this bird knows exactly what she's doing. And I'll make sure you get all the information you need in my next final December Christmas Swiss Bites newsletter. But in the meantime, many thanks and have a top Christmas. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Bye.